Folks, what's going on? Sorry to bug you on a Sunday night, but it's okay. So, little backstory, so you understand why we're coming a little bit earlier to you. When you do this full time and when you work essentially 6 to 7 days a week, you seem to have a lot of time on your hands, and you get a lot of time to thinking, and you get a lot of time to kind of just do your own thing. But I've just been talking to producer Ryan about this over and over again. The whole thing we're doing with season 3 is making freedom fun again. That's not just a shtick. That's not just the slogan. That's not just the theme. That's an actual mission we're going on. That's an actual mission we're going on. And part of that means sometimes you do random live events that you just do because you want to do them. Free will is great, isn't it? I hope you can still tune in for tomorrow. We canceled our morning live show, and we're going to have Todd Seavey, former Justice League writer and the author of the awesome book that's been out for a year, Libertarianism for Beginners. So go ahead and check those out. But I want to get to talking about a topic that I've had a lot of people throw at me recently. Ryan, can you hit the next agenda item, please? Thank you, Mr. Producer. It's about this. And some of you know, you Turning Point guys, you Yale guys, you SFL brawlers, you CR fighters, you college libertarian screamers in a good way. Sometimes people need to be screamed at. It comes to this. Somebody asked me, were you afraid when you were going to start doing this full time? Were you afraid people wouldn't tune in? Were you afraid people wouldn't donate? Were you afraid people wouldn't sponsor? Were you afraid people wouldn't read? Were you afraid that it would just implode? No. Not at all. Not at all. When you know you have a good formula, when you know you have good content, and I just realized I have the other earbud out. That's awkward. When you know you have something that people want, you have something that people want to look for, that's when people come in, they invest, they take their time. But they take their time and they actually engage with the content, they like what you do, and from there, that's how movements grow. The biggest thing, the underlying thing, is because I'm young. I'm only 22. I know people that are 17, 18 years old over in Afghanistan, serving their country, defending the lives of innocent people. I know people around the country that are young entrepreneurs that are creating apps like DonorSee, where it's accountable charity and you can kick out the NGOs, started by a person that's only like 23 years old. That app is so effective. The DonorSee app is so effective. The Peace Corps bans their personnel from using it. I'm a big Hamilton musical fanatic. And yeah, I know they're progressive psychos, but hear me out. You listen to the mixtape. You go and read the biography of Alexander Hamilton. Jefferson, only like 25 when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. Hamilton, only 20, helping lead Washington's army, helping fight for the Constitution. And you look at the hundreds of thousands of conservative and libertarian activists that tried to take away the ability for progressives to go on and further deteriorate our country. We're surrounded by fake news. We're surrounded by a lot of pessimism. We're surrounded by a lot of naysayers. But there is one thing that everyone just wants to talk about right now. It's the biggest scandal. It's the biggest issue. It's the one thing that people are literally foaming at the mouth about. Feminists going crazy. Progressives going crazy. Everyone's going crazy about this. Mr. Producer, third point. That's right. I'm talking about First Lady Trump's choice of clothing for her visit to Saudi Arabia. But it's going to be awkward if a dude talks about this. So I want to bring in another conservative warrior, a millennial champion, currently running for New York State Assembly. Ladies and gentlemen, Morgan Zegers. Morgan, are you on the line?
Yep, right here.
Good to see you. So is her wardrobe statement that she wore to Saudi Arabia offensive to all humanity or just part of humanity?
I guess the only way I saw it was a strong statement. Personally, I disagree with the discrimination that women face over there. And I saw it as a way to say that she stands against what they do to women over there. And I was kind of proud, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. Because You look back the last couple administrations, and you see people who are, you see presidents and other politicians bringing their wives over, and they all put on a burqa. They all go ahead and kowtow. I don't know whether it's a sign of respect or a sign of fear. I think it might be fear on some ends, especially if the last president who went on a global apology tour during his first couple months in office. But you have Melania with that giant gold belt and the black jumpsuit thing. I mean, she's classy as ever. And then you have Ivanka that wears one of the dresses from her clothing line, and that's like, okay.
That makes a statement. It makes a statement because I'm very middle class. I grew up in upstate New York, and to see her in a dress that I would wear, that I would go to a store and maybe pick out, that's in my budget, it was definitely nice, especially on the RNC stage. It definitely made a statement, just the way Melania did. And I know when it comes to the Middle East, I was told a story once by this woman who trains women to run for office. And she went over to, I can't remember which country, but a female candidate was running. And it was so controversial that eventually, after so many threats, her husband had his brakes cut in his car 3 days before the election. He was assassinated, basically. And she continued on in the election, and she ended up winning. But women go through so much over there, and then here I am, and people think it's so great to see me running for office, but really it's nothing. It was easy for me to sign the papers. The biggest enemy I have right now is just combating some of the people in my community who say I haven't put in the time in the party yet, or I haven't given my time to the community yet, but I provide a unique experience. And that's all I face. That's the only problem I'm going to face. And it's way different than death threats in other countries. So I'm very thankful for that.
Definitely. Well, if you keep going further and then you win and you keep doing what you say you're going to do, you'll probably get that eventually. I don't know if that's like a really awkward benchmark to meet, but there's this new game on the App Store. It's called President Sim, where basically you become president, you have to make a bunch of decisions. And I ran the government as a libertarian. I had like 100% approval rating. I don't know who wrote the game, but that's how it went. And I ended up getting assassinated at some point. But yeah, the world is weird. But let's back up a little bit.
Okay.
You're only 20.
Yeah.
And you're running for state assembly. Okay. When did you wake up and say, this is what I'm going to do? This is what I'm going to spend the next X amount of months putting my family, myself, my reputation, my finances, everything on the table for this?
It's hard to explain because I know a lot of politicians have this glorious story of, one day they said, I'm going to do it, I'm going to change the world. But really for me, in high school, I joined the VFW and I thought I was going to go into college focusing in veterans advocacy. And then one day I realized that there was just too many issues that I cared about to just focus on one. And when I realized that all of the issues that were personal to me were deriving from the State House in Albany, I kind of just thought, okay, now how do I get there? And then I was like, oh, goodness, I'm going to have to run for office, aren't I? And then from there, it wasn't, oh, I'm young, I'm going to have to wait a little bit or something. It was just, okay, what's the best year for me to do it? And 2018 came up.
So earlier, when I introduced the segment, I went ahead and talked about the challenges that we're facing as a country, but especially the challenges that we're facing as young people. I just graduated from Liberty University, which is the most active conservative campus in America. And you look at what's going on, and in terms of just confronting the problems that we're finding with government. I mean, when Trump won the election in November, when Republicans took over large majorities of the states, I think that we have 33 governorships. We have most of the bicameral legislatures throughout the country, and we have the House and the Senate. And depending on who's watching this, that might be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on if you've been pleased or dismayed with what's been going on with ACHA and everything else. But the biggest problem is this: we've got a media that constantly focuses on the fake news. We've got a media that constantly focuses on the fact that Melania wore a jumpsuit, that Trump got 2 scoops of ice cream.
That's my perfect example.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand. It's either they're trying to cover something up, and then I sound like I'm going on some type of Alex Jones conspiracy binge or something, or I'm actually kind of worried about what's happening, because government corruption it goes often, like it's one thing if you see it on TV, you expect government officials to certainly be under the microscope at the federal level, but state governments, and this is what I've been talking about when I've been recording interviews for season 3 of the podcast, which comes back July 5th, people. State government, local government, that's where you'll find most people have the most say over your life and your property. They have the most say over what goes on for your businesses and your community. And in terms of adversely affecting your life when it comes to taxation, when it comes to licensing, when it comes to your ability to own a gun or anything else, so much goes on at the state level that we don't talk about. That's been the biggest thing about your campaign. I mean, do you think people actually really care about these state elections, or do you think they're just going to continue to ignore them as much as we've seen in the past?
Yeah, and that's something I'd really like to focus on. The media draws so much attention on like who's going to be our next president, how many seats do we have in Congress for each party. But I try to remind people that so much of their life is going to be determined by the local and the state level. I mean, the unfunded mandates that are passed down officials, and then Governor Cuomo sort of blames the local officials. He says, well, I gave them the power to decide. But to me, it's unfair, and people are frustrated, but I think they're not frustrated with the right people. And so if I bring the attention to where the problems are in the state, then perhaps we could shift that attention that was nationally, I think, put a little wrongly in the wrong place. I would like to bring attention to the fact of the overspending in New York State and how Governor Cuomo is spending billions of dollars in subsidies. New York and upstate has only had a 3% increase in employment. So the people in upstate that voted for Trump, definitely, they did so thinking probably that was going to be our out. But we still have an entire outlay of state leaders who are definitely still against us and our values as conservatives. So we need strong conservatives who are going to go to Albany and then remind them that upstate is a valuable asset to the state.
So the campaign consultant in me is like screaming right now because I've got to ask this eventually. But what's been the most difficult thing running a campaign, especially like you already have, let's just face it, you've already got several things going up against you. You're a woman, you're a conservative, and you're in New York. Oh, and fourth thing, you're young.
Yeah,
what's the biggest challenge?
I'd say those are all actually positives. I'm embraced more than people would think because people want difference. I mean, whether they were for Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump in 2016, it showed people wanted something different in politics. And then that gave me more encouragement of saying, you know what, here I am. And I'm definitely going to bring something different to the stage. But I've been really embraced. And more of the older people in my area who they've been kind of fighting on my behalf when they come up against somebody who's a little nervous and somebody who says, well, she's pretty young. They remind them, you're going to be gone in 20 years. Who knows where you're going to be in 20 years, but Morgan's going to be 40 in 20 years and she's still going to be cooking. She's going to have her family just getting started and she's going to be in her career. Just beginning to grow her career. So I definitely am more embraced than people would say, and that's a positive with my age, with being a woman, with being a conservative, and being in New York.
So you brought up something interesting, and I've been talking to a lot of folks running for office in New York recently. We've got my friend Alex Merced, who's running for New York City Comptroller. We've got Brian Waddell, who's running for Manhattan Borough President, and it's really interesting because New York, the stereotype from, coming from my end, because I'm in Virginia, where your Republicans are blatantly red, your libertarians want to abolish everything, and then your Democrats want to put on some insane RFID chip in everyone type of policy where it's just like insane in the membrane, like I'm talking totally screwed up in the brain. It's really strange. And when it comes to New York, it seems like, I'm not going to say people are a little bit more to the left or people a little bit more moderate, but I think people are a little bit too tired of, just hearing the same political stumps all the time. So, you can go and actually talk to a Bernie supporter. So if, let's say you were going to go and talk to a Democrat, so to speak, I mean, how would you initiate a conversation? How would you try and give them your pitch without, completely ending the conversation? Because if you go ahead and say you're a Republican, most of them are just gonna like put on blinders. It's gonna be like they're just shutting that conversation down to begin with. So have you had that opportunity? I mean, how would you talk to them?
Well, it's kind of interesting, but I'm trying to make myself most accessible. So I give people my number, I have my email out, and I've gotten an email from the representative for every town for gun safety in my area, and she'd love to sit down and meet. And I'm a member of the NRA, but I'm definitely going to give her that time of day and hear out, because, I don't want any harm done to people because of guns. And because I'm in the NRA, I definitely believe in gun safety in the form of responsible gun ownership. So I'm definitely open to meeting with her, and that's something that I look forward to. But when I'm meeting with Democrats who are sort of on the fence, New York has major corruption issues. So I would definitely bring up something like that, with the fact that we are spending millions of dollars, and most of the time there is no public discretion requirement. So I just don't know how anybody of any party can think that that's a partisan issue. I would work on something like that, and then work on term limits for leadership members, because if we can start with just the little things that are more easily accomplished and more feasible, then perhaps as an entire state we can start to bring a shift. I mean, I'm not trying to go in there and say that I can bring major change to our state as a 20-year-old, but I'm saying I can at least get something started and maybe join a greater coalition and build up something that's going to say we deserve ethics reform, our communities deserve ethics reform.
Exactly, because I really don't understand how people think we can reform our federal government if we can't go ahead and start reforming our states.
Yeah. And that goes back to what you said earlier, with the fact that people kind of overlook both the local and state levels.
Yeah, it's definitely a task ahead. But what are the biggest things you hope to accomplish, other than just winning? What are the biggest things you hope to accomplish, especially as the campaign goes? I mean, what do you expect from what do you expect from your opponents? Because at some point, it's one thing just to beat them. It's another thing when you're dragging them over to actually accepting some of your positions. Are there areas where you think you can actually work with them?
Yeah, I mean, I can't go around saying that, Democrats don't want jobs in our area, because jobs are what I would like in my area too. But the leadership that we've had, I mean, under Cuomo, like I said, we've only had 3% increase, or not even 3%, 2.7% increase in employment. So if I could sit down with people of the other party and say, your ideas are not exactly working for our state. Perhaps if we didn't focus on subsidies so much, perhaps if we made our state more business friendly and took away the regulations and didn't pass such an economic principally denying $15 minimum wage, then maybe we can try something new. But then again, that's kind of a fantasy of mine. But
we could dream.
I know, exactly. In a perfect world, we would get rid of the minimum wage, and we would start to get rid of some of those regulations, because I sit down with business leaders and we're working together to come up with a way to offset that problem. I mean, even with farmers in New York State, so New York's kind of unique. We have we hire more farm hands on our agribusiness plots, and the fact that the minimum wage is being increased this much is really concerning to me and to everybody, because they cannot handle it. So they have a minimum wage tax credit right now, but it's only $250 per person. So first we could double that. And then I'd like to work with all small businesses, because farmers are really small businessmen, small business women. So if we can make something that works for all of them to offset the cost of the minimum wage, that's something that's feasible, I think. And I definitely would look forward to tackling that right away.
Definitely. That's a great place to start. And I got to shift onto this eventually, because every day I wake up and I suddenly remember it's real, and I feel like I'm in like the Twilight Zone or something. But somebody in New York thought it was really smart to have tuition-free universities.
Oh,
I know.
Topic in my family.
Where's the schism? Because there's no such thing as a free lunch. And if anything, it's also indentured servitude, because I was going through that legislation, and it's heinous, folks. If you actually read it, like I read policy papers for fun because I don't really have much of a life, but you read that and it's like, wait a second. You have to stay in the state of New York for several years if you've taken that. And let's say you get your degree and you get a good job in Texas or like Kansas or New Jersey or something. I mean, it's like indentured servitude.
It sounds good on paper. It looks good. Cuomo's going to campaign with it. And that's exactly what's wrong. We have a governor literally campaigning, I would say, on the taxpayer's dime almost. I mean, with the state of the state, how he split that up and put it around the state, it's disrespectful to me, and it's disrespectful to everybody. I mean, he's doing it right in front of us. He passed the budget as a state of necessity. It just continues. And with the free college, there's this idea that you can't take away something that's already been given. So that really concerns me. I'm sure you've heard that too. It's a classic government thing. So the Democrats give things away, and then it makes us look like bad people to take things away from people now. So I'd like to work best with families, because student debt is obviously an issue. I'm not going to deny that. But if we try and make it more flexible so that students can either graduate a year early or a semester early by receiving college credits in high school and taking away that insane gen ed requirement system. I mean, I go to school to become an accountant, to become an auditor. I don't want to go to school to learn how to paint. And I was forced to take a painting class. I mean, I would love to take a painting class in my free time, but I don't want to go to college to learn how to become a painter and a more well-rounded person. I go to college to learn my job skills. And if we could take something like that away, and that would maybe even take away a semester for the kids who might need to take away the thousands of dollars that each semester costs, at really anything that would help. So I would definitely look to the tax credit or to the college credit system, and then to the gen eds.
Exactly. I mean, just looking at New York, like, you have an overabundance of grad students that are attending bars and driving cabs. And what we have, when you look nationally, is a giant deficit of welders, of plumbers, of people that know like actual work.
Mm-hmm. And the people that are going into these jobs, I have a lot of friends that have either decided that their major in college was not for them, or that even college was not for them. They went to a trade school, they went to an apprenticeship, and now they're making serious money. And they're my age. They're 20 years old. They are going into a serious career, and they're making serious money. And people that are going into college with these fruitful majors are not receiving that same benefit. So I saw under Cuomo's thing, I mean, with the 3% increase in employment, most of them have been in minimum wage jobs for restaurants, for fast food places. There's no long-term career jobs. So people are leaving, and I don't blame them.
Exactly. But speaking of young people facing adversity, what I'm really happy to see are people like you that are jumping into the arena when it comes to things like that. And we're seeing young candidates. Like, we had Jake Leahy from Turning Point News or Pipeline News, or wherever they did that. He's on the Board of Education in his home. Yeah. And you have young candidates all over the country that are putting forth these liberty messages, these principles of individualism, peace, property, free markets, limited government. They're actually going and they're getting it done. So for people like us that are about to take on this giant, massive debt, they're about to take on these giant, burdensome government tasks ahead of us, for people that actually want to live their lives freer, and they're young and they don't know what they want to do next, what's your advice for those people?
I specifically went to a college so that I would not receive major college debt. My dad's in the military, so AU gives out great military benefits. That was one of the major decisions in my college decision process. But other than that, I love listening to Dave Ramsey. My dad and I he would drive in the truck with me when I grew up, and we would listen to Dave Ramsey. And he's all about not putting yourself in debt, investing in the right things. And so I would first look to invest in land, and then to, really be responsible with your choices. But that's the hard part. When you're a freshman, a sophomore in high school, you're not thinking about, this will really save me some college credits, and then I could graduate early in 6 years. You're thinking about, the girls at the cafeteria table who are talking about you, or something like that. So if we could open the communication up with the teachers, with the guidance counselors, with the parents in high school, so that they are more aware of the opportunities. I took French in high school for 2 extra years. You were supposed to take it until sophomore year, and then you could take it in junior and senior, or you could drop out. And I just took it 2 more years, and I got 8 college credits. A college credit is $1,400 or around there each. So I'm graduating a year early from college because I took all these random high school classes and got college credit. And I had no plan for that. I was just lucky. I just decided to take those. But if we could open that pathway up, that's what I would suggest to younger people. And I feel bad. I wish I could tell all the people that are my age now to go back and do that, because it's really saving me a pretty penny. But if we could get started on that, that'd be great.
Definitely. Morgan, if people want to link up with your campaign, if they want to donate, volunteer, learn more about you, how can they do so?
They could go to morganzegers.com, and they could follow my page on Facebook, and I'll comment on the video. I'll do that from the page, and they can go like it.
Perfect. Morgan, thank you so much for coming on the program tonight. It's been an absolute blast having you on.
Thank you so much. I really
Best of
appreciate
luck.
it.
That's all good. Anyway, folks, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. Where's the one screen, Ryan? Folks, we're still learning Be Live. So when I if you saw me put up one finger right now, I promise you I was not telling her to be quiet. I'm trying to get one screen, two screen. We have an entire thing. You know,
Okay.
Ryan, bring her back up. Bring her back up. Think how the spin on this is going to be. You're going to have people that are like,
you shushed a woman.
And then he shushed her. I pulled her Rand Paul. I was like, shh.
How dare you? It's okay. And then I'll get criticized for standing up for you.
If the media goes ahead and like spins this, you could use this as a promo video. And I'll do it for a little bit. It's like she's going up against the patriarchy.
I don't even know how that would make me look. That's politics. I'm learning. You know, I'm not a politician, but I'm trying my best.
Hopefully you don't become too good, and then it's like must pass every policy that increases the tax code. Anyway, we'll talk later, Morgan.
All right.
Care.
See ya.
So, folks, you heard her. This is one example. Just one example. You ask for examples of people doing it. You pray for people going out and doing the thing. And here's an example of somebody that's doing that. Here's an example of a young person that's going up and confronting big government. Here's an example of somebody that's going up and actually talking about corruption. Here's somebody that actually understands that nothing government promises you is ever actually free. Because in case you didn't know, taxation is theft. That's just plain and simple. What makes me going to McDonald's not theft? Consent. What makes me going to college and giving them money for a class different than theft? Consent. It's about that. But most importantly, it's about empowering people and giving them more of the freedom to choose in their everyday lives. Plain and simple. Well, anyway, tune in tomorrow. We've got Todd Seavey coming to talk about his book at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And like I said, this might happen more often than I think. It may not, but when you're trying to make freedom fun again, you've got to act a little rebellious and just do what you want. And even if that means a lot of you tuning in on a Sunday night, and I'm looking at the numbers right now. You guys love this. This is great. Hopefully you guys go back on the Morgan's page and you go ahead and give her a like and maybe drop some muchos dineros, just saying. But definitely tune in tomorrow and let's keep this going. I'm Remso W. Martinez. Thank you for tuning into Remso Republic Live, and I'll talk to you later, folks.